The state of New York boasts many great qualities. One of the most beautiful skylines in one of the United States' most iconic cities, some of the oldest sports teams around, and one of the most diverse populations in the world. A population of about 20 million people. Something that you might not know is that every year, it's estimated that a group larger than the population of New York, about 21 million people, are victims of human trafficking worldwide. Surprisingly, this term, human trafficking, is unknown or underdefined to far too many people. I'm here today to define commercial human trafficking, put in perspective how widespread it is in the world, and show you how it is being combated across the world. Now, normally when we think of human trafficking, we might think of something like the movie Taken, where we just associate it with the fear of tourism and strangers. Sadly, the issue is much larger than this, and most often, victims don't think anyone is coming to rescue them. Now, depending on the authority you ask or the region that you're in, the definition of human trafficking can change. Defined by the United States Department of State, someone is a victim of human trafficking when they are coerced, forced, or deceived into labor, including child soldiers, prostitution, bonded labor, and domestic servitude, or to be maintained in said labor through coercion or other means. As I said before, the United States estimates this number at about 21 million people. But depending on who you ask, the number could be different. The United Nations, for example, estimates 2 million women are sexually exploited every year, which is about a quarter of what the United States estimates. Ben Skinner, the journalist who's very adamant about the issue, estimates about 27 million. And there are a few important, surprising facts to put this into perspective. With the cost of a Bears ticket, you could have potentially purchased 2 people's lives. With the time it took you to watch the movie Taken, 3 or 4 people could now be slaves in the United States. The reason that there are so many discrepancies in the estimated number of victims is because different agencies use different techniques to classify what a victim is. For example, the United States classifies all instances of prostitution or forced labor, regardless of any displacement, as modern slavery. The United States uses broader terms because they can then prosecute more criminals, as the rate for prosecution previously was 1 for every 800 victims. Another reason is that this crime is far more difficult to get a grasp on than even drug trafficking, because there are less agencies and officers devoted to its Fortunately, this debasement of our common humanity is not located, or as President Obama calls it, is not located in one, or confined to one area of the world. It happens literally across the world. For example, in Indonesia, hundreds of thousands of fishermen sell themselves into bonded labor to pay for their family's food. In Africa, children are abducted and forced to become part of armies or prostitutes for the soldiers. South and Central America, there are reports of American-style plantation drug operations that force abductees to work in their fields. In India, families will sell their children, sometimes for an hour, sometimes permanently, just to help pay for food. And in America, people are brought in to be maids, but are treated like prisoners of war, being abused and isolated, so much so that the world doesn't even know they're there. The frightening truth is that this is the second fastest growing criminal trade after drug trafficking. It's estimated that $36 billion came through the industry last year. Unsettling fact for you, that's equivalent to Apple's 4th quarter revenues this year. So the world literally spent as much money on Apple products as on human lives in 3 months. Although this is a worldwide crisis, there are worldwide responses against modern slavery. For example, UNGIFT, the United Nations Global Initiative to fight human trafficking, is one of the most capable groups around. There are others as well that work together with and separate from UNGIFT, and they all work to increase awareness for villages and communities to help avoid becoming victims. They increase education for women who are most likely to become victims, so that they know how to cope with the world outside of prostitution and have jobs that don't include selling themselves. Also, these groups help create more help opportunities for victims, such as creating shelters in red light districts so that escapees have somewhere to go. And they also will help them acquire temporary visas regardless of their previous citizenship. In America, groups are working to increase awareness among teachers, truckers, and others who are likely to encounter victims so that they can better help them. There are dozens of charities, if not hundreds, to donate to. And 11.5 million, and the donations are $11.5 million donation by Google was estimated to help free 12,000 victims and likely prevent the capture of thousands more. There are multiple organizations that also accept volunteer help, such as Mercy Corps. And people can even volunteer locally, such as running in a 5K, like the Aruna 5K that was held in DeKalb last week. I ran in this 5K and we raised just under $5,000 to help women in Southeast Asia escape from and recover from sexual slavery. Now, it's unlikely that slavery will ever be 100% eradicated, but through knowledge of the crisis, how it affects the entire world, and what is being done about it, millions of people are working to fulfill a promise that should be held true as long as we have civilized society. A promise made by Abraham Lincoln 150 years ago. He said that, like us, all persons held as slaves should be thenceforth and forever free.